Hi everybody, this is Kent from Man About Tools, and today we're building a timber frame pavilion in our garden. We wanted to build an open structure as a centerpiece for our garden, and as a shady spot to sit, work, or socialize. I wanted it to be built in a timber frame style with simple joinery and posts on 10-foot by 10-foot centers. The peak height of the pavilion is 11 foot 3 inches. The large sloping shed roof faces the south, with another smaller roof on the front facing north, with a clerestory type opening above. The rafters and beam ends have a quarter ellipse profile, in the same fashion as the woodshed I built earlier in the summer. The structure is built from red cedar and fir, and topped with a metal roof. I'll add a rain gutter off the back to collect water for the garden. The head clearance is 7 feet, and in the future I'll add a wooden deck or concrete patio. The footings are dug down below the frost line and sit on a hard clay layer. The posts will sit on galvanized metal saddles attached to an anchor bolt that's embedded in a 9-inch by 9-inch concrete pier. Connecting the posts are 2x8 side girts. These extend past the front posts and will allow me to build a small front roof section angled opposite to the main roof. A pair of 2x8 beams will support the front roof section. Topping the posts are two 6x6 beams. 14 curved corner braces will give rigidity to the frame. 2x8 rafters span the top beams, with blocking added between them for lateral strength. Over the front beams sit 2x6 rafters, topped with 1x6 strapping. On the back, I have 1x8 strapping over the main rafters. I'll trim out both roofs with cedar 1x4s before installing tar paper and metal roofing. I have a full set of plans available from my website, manabouttools.com, and I'll put a link in the description below. I laid out the post locations using string and batter boards, then dug the footing holes. The batter boards are made by hammering in 3 stakes and connecting them with level ledger boards. Strings hang from weights and cross over the center of each pier form. The pier forms are simple boxes made from 1/2-inch plywood and 2x2s. I added a fillet strip to the corners to form a chamfer. These strings are strung over the ledger boards 10 feet apart and are square and level. I can remove the lines once all the forms are leveled and squared to these strings and secured to small stakes in the ground. All the tops of the pier forms are now on the same level plane. To keep the cement from sticking to the plywood, I apply a good amount of vegetable oil to all inside surfaces. I pound in some rebar to reinforce the piers. Pounding the rebar into the hard clay at the bottom of the hole keeps it in place roughly in the center of the form. I mix concrete and fill the holes and forms. This is my second wheelbarrow load for this form. I use a short length of rebar to work the concrete and settle it. I overfill the form, then lightly tap it to bring bubbles to the surface. I'll then let it sit and settle for a few minutes. Then I scrape off the excess and form a chamfer on the top edges. I'll use the trowel and marks on the form to find center. Then work in an anchor bolt before the cement sets up. I cover the forms with plastic and leave to cure for a few days. It was very hot and dry when I poured them, so I didn't want the concrete to dry too quickly. The plastic should help prevent that. When set, I can strip the forms. For me, it's like unwrapping a present. It's always cool to see how it works out. I'll remove the screws from the small stakes, then the screws holding the four sides together, then gently pry off the plywood panels. The pier forms needed to be a bit taller where the ground sloped away. These forms needed a few 2x2s to hold them together. As the forms came apart, I labeled them with a Sharpie in case I wanted to reassemble them for another project. I cover the piers with plastic for a few more days to keep them from drying too fast. I'll leave the batterboard stakes and ledger boards where they are for now. I might need them later for temporary bracing supports. I'll scrape off any sharp edges or corners with a piece of wood while the concrete is still soft. We have lumber milled from our own trees stickered up and drying in the back of our property. Now that my drawings are done, I can select the lumber I need and move it to the garden with the truck. In this first pile, I have two long 6x6s for the top beams. These have a bit of a bow to them, but it's not too bad. I'll orient them so the curve of the bow becomes the crown. In another drying pile, I have a stack of 2x8 fir for the rafters. It was disappointing to see that many of these boards twisted while drying. Some turned out to be unusable for rafters, but most of them I was able to salvage. In yet another pile, I'll try to find the straightest stock for the posts. It took a while to sort through and find the best candidates. I also found some very straight 2x8s for the girts and front roof beams. It's great to have a few extra sawhorses on hand to organize all this lumber and to have it at a convenient working height. Having everything I need and sorted out, I'll start with the 4 posts. The rear posts are cut to length by marking all 4 sides with a large speed square. Then making 4 cuts with a circular saw. And finishing it off with a handsaw. I'll get 2 rear posts from this one long 6x6. I then cut the 2 taller front posts to length in the same fashion. The post saddles I'm using are adjustable in case the anchor bolts are out of square. These particular saddles are made for a 5.5-inch post. I need to trim the ends of each post with circular saw and chisel to fit these saddles. I believe the manufacturer does make a similar saddle that fits a full dimension 6x6. The tops of the back posts have a 2-inch deep by 6-inch long lap cut to receive the side girts. I cut these by setting the depth of my circular saw to 2 inches and make a series of thin slices into the post. I used the speed square as a guide. Then I break these thin segments with a hammer. Then use a wooden mallet and sharp chisel to clean up the cut. I chamfer the edges of the rear posts with a power plane. The front posts have 2 slots cut in them, one on the side face to receive the 2x8 girt, and another on the front face to receive the front roof beam. I'll lay out these cuts on the posts with pencil and square, then set the depth of my saw to 2 inches and cut a series of parallel slices. Then I'll rotate the post a turn, set the depth of my blade to 1 inch, and cut the other slot. These slots overlap slightly, so I'll need to make a small notch in a front roof beam later to compensate. And I'll chamfer the front posts with a power plane. I'll set the post saddles on the piers and snug the nut finger tight. Starting with the rear post, I'll stand it up, set it in the saddle and position it. I'll drill pilot holes in the bottom of the post and run in a screw on either side. I have temporary support bracing ready and attached with a screw into a small stake pounded into the ground. I'll use some clamps to hold the post while I plumb it with a long level. I'll do the same for the other rear post. It's a good idea to have everything ready and tools and screws within arm's reach if you're doing this by yourself. The taller and heavier front posts were a bit more of a challenge. I had a sawhorse ready to stand on to help with plumbing and braces. Next, I'll cut the side girts to length and mark their crown for their upside orientation, then chamfer these with the power plane. On one end, I'll cut out a 2" by 6" notch. This will allow the beam to fit neatly over the top of the rear post. I attach these to the post with some construction adhesive and lag bolts. The heads of the bolts are countersunk with a Forstner bit, then pre-drilled with a 1/4" bit. I have a board clamped to the rear post to catch the girt as I'm positioning it. A clamp holds the rear end in place as I drill and run in the lag bolts with an impact driver. The other girt didn't go as well due to a slight warp, so I removed the rear clamp to get it to fit. I used a few clamps to pull it into the groove on the front post before running in the lag bolts. Thank you so much for watching part 1 of this pavilion build. If you like what you see on our channel, please give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe if you haven't done so already. We'll see you next time.